Well, thank you very much, Ronan and everybody, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. I plan to run through the first topic is medical research ethics. And it's the basis upon which I built my second topic today, my proposed research proposal. Last month, Dr. Judith Townsend gave her exceedingly comprehensive coverage of ethical issues when conducting research via electronic means. Today, my approach has to do with ethics in respect of research on humans in the field of medicine. By the way, medical ethics is different to what I'm going to be talking about today. Medical ethics has to do with medical professional treatment decision-making, as opposed to my research ethics focus. So, next one. Here we have my plan for today. If you see at the bottom, I've got the word leads. I'm not giving you a bibliography. I'm going to give you some email, World Wide Web leads you can follow up on if you fancy. Right, well, we'll start with long time ago, 430 to 350 BC. The Hippocratic Corpus was written, part of which was the Hippocratic Oath. And I have up there the relevant section for you to read. I will prescribe regimen for the good of my patients, according to my ability and my judgment, and never do harm to anyone. And to please no one, I will prescribe a deadly drug or give advice which may cause death. It's often assumed that the medical students take the Hippocratic Oath, but this is rarely the case now. And in fact, in Bristol, in about 15 or so years ago, they decided to make their own up. I will not use my medical knowledge contrary to the laws of humanity, is the critical section here. And between those two oaths, as far back as 1865, we have the first, I believe, the first researcher's perspective on care of the participants in experimentation. Notwithstanding those fine intentions, controversial research programs, unethical experimentation and human trials have been part of the medical field for centuries, but a lot of them went very wrong. And one of them, such as the Tuskegee syphilis experiment in America. It enlisted about 400 men with syphilis, and, I think there were 600 men with syphilis, and they did not treat them with the drug of choice at that time, which was the new penicillin of the Nobel laureate Alexander Fleming. They wanted to monitor these gentlemen to see how the disease progressed, as opposed to making decisions about how to treat them. And then, of course, there were the World War II research programs. We won't go into those. They are well documented. More recently, there's been cancer drugs injected into elderly subjects, again to see how the disease progressed. And then there were the two Children's Hospital organ donation retention scandals, and finally I've instanced the Northwick Park private health facility trial, which caused tragedy for 6 healthy volunteers who suffered multiple organ failure when they were injected with the trial drug. So you can see there was need for principles upon which to conduct trials in the future. So the Nuremberg Code was devised, and then the Declaration of Helsinki built upon that. And finally, more recently, we've got the Human Tissue Act, which requires regulating lawful removal, retention and use of body parts of humans. So here we have, if a research project study is so methodologically flawed that little or no reliable information will result, then it is unethical to subject participants to go through the trial. And that's where we are now. There are different types of human research. There are the phases of research. I'm just trying to keep it snappy. You will receive these slides for in the future, near future, for you to read more fully. Phase 1 trials are the very early phases of drug testing on humans, and Phase 2 tests the effectiveness in treating the targeted disease. And Phase 3 trials are much larger, and they will only take place in humans if the Phase 1 and 2s have been conducted already. There are laboratory research, there's epidemiological research, there's observational research, qualitative research studies and questionnaires. I think it's rather unfortunate that when we see documentation for which consultants submit to seek approval for progressing with their research, we are looking at what they call a battery of questionnaires. But anyway, so there are, in fact, now, since the mid-40s, regulation on ethical dimensions. There's the ISO standards, and originally research ethics committees were set up following Royal College of Physician guidelines. World Medical Association upgraded its Declaration of Helsinki. It does that periodically. And the good clinical practice arrangements speak for themselves. Treatment research, also called clinical trials, generally involves an intervention such as medication, psychotherapy, new devices, or new approaches to surgery or radiation therapy, etc. It's a type of clinical research that compares one treatment with another, and it may involve patients, although we call them participants now, or healthy people, or both. There's been a host of legislation right from the mid-19th century to date, which is helping to regulate ethical research in humans. And then the NHS decided to set up research ethics committees, which there was clearly a need for these to provide independent and impartial proportionate scrutiny and opinion for the protection of NHS patients in respect of their rights, their welfare, their dignity, and for the good promotion of good research. So they set up about 220 of these, but now we're only numbering about 60, which charged to oversee the ethical review of medical research, to protect the participants from exposure to unethical risks or invasions of privacy, and importantly, to facilitate ethically acceptable attempts to identify new and better treatments from which we may all potentially benefit. Even more importantly, given the history of paternalism and secrecy behind past studies, we try to provide public reassurance. So, a consultant in a hospital or a nurse, whoever it is in the medical field wishing to experiment, if you like, upon patients, who we now call participants, they have to submit a valid application. And they have to sign to the effect that they are adhering to the various declarations. This committee has to assess about 75 different areas of question to protect the patient, the participant. So what personal participant-orientated aspects are scrutinized? There was a book when I joined in the late 1990s, and it was a rather cumbersome tome, so I tried to trace it onto an A4. It's quite small print, but that seemed to be useful at a meeting to run through in my head there. We have to be extra protective of people in emergency trials. Emergencies when people are unconscious in the ICU department. They're very vulnerable, and they cannot sign the consent to the conduct of experiments upon them because they are unconscious. So, but as soon as they become conscious, they are asked if they would like to continue in the trial or withdraw from the trial. Research on children. There has to be an authorized person to sign their consent as well. If they're Gillick competent, then they will be able to sign for themselves, but generally, children under the age of 18 have to have other consent made for them. We give out a participant information sheet which explains what the study will be, who will be conducting it, why they've been chosen, and going back to those emergency children and genetic type experiments, you can only do these experiments, these trials, on the relevant people. So it's no good giving a drug to somebody who is conscious when, in fact, we want to test what it's doing to somebody who is unconscious. And we can't do it on children where adults will be suitable. And so we explain all this in participant information sheets. Have you heard of paid volunteers? Sometimes these days it's creeping in that we actually pay the volunteer. We're not supposed to pay for time. We're supposed to reimburse volunteers who opt into these trials, but on occasions when they are hard to access participants, then we try to give them a little gift of some sort as a way of thanks. But everybody these days, of course, has to consent to being a participant in a trial, a drug trial or device trial. And there are 2 slides about consenting. It will be illegal not to have a signed consent form before pursuing these trials upon patients. The research ethics application has to be approved, and there are various levels of decision made before that before they can go ahead. And then the research ethics committees are governed as well by the HTA earlier. It is essential these days that all research reports are disseminated into the public domain, whether the trial has proved to be a positive outcome or a negative one, so that everybody knows what has been going on. As I said, I'm not giving you a bibliography, I'm giving you some leads. There's one set, and there's another. And that's the end of this part of the program. Here's a little bit about my proposed research project. I did a couple of dissertations about babies born without the top of their head. The brain and the skull can be missing, or varying degrees of that. And my question was whether or not the rest of the good organs might be entered into the organ donation program, because there are a lot of children in the likes of Great Ormond Street waiting for a heart or a lung, and at the moment there's no legal route to parents offering their anencephalic baby, as they're called, into that program. And I wondered if there might be a chance of creating one. No law is silent on it. There's medical confusion. The Royal College of Paediatricians has two sets of guidelines. One saying, yes, doctors, it would be okay for them to take organs from anencephalic babies, and another one saying, but you can't take organs from babies under 2 months old. There's a 2-month rule. So, unfortunately, that's not helpful, because anencephalic babies generally die virtually at birth or a day or so afterwards. So that 2-month rule stops all action along those lines. However, in Australia, North America, Japan and Germany, they have arrangements, which have legalized the use of anencephalic organs from, there are about 8 organs that might be good enough to transplant. And here is a picture of such little babies just born. Right, could I just go? I can anyway. What's wrong with these babies that others conspire to harvest their organs? Their plight must be dire. It's awful to say, but these children display missing parts of their top brain, in some the entire. They can't see, they can't hear. They're unconscious, unaware. They don't feel. Life's unreal. A timely death, sad doctors declare. But let's look more closely at the controversy re law. It is medics, author, commentator voices to the fore. They dissect, type, debate, deciding another's fate, whether anencephalic organs may be used once more. I've scoured every database. I'm exhausted till blue in the face, for I failed to find, in any shape or kind, proof of asking what parents want in such a case. So my thesis title, I'm going to say, 2 die or 1 to die, that is law's question. And should statute silence be broken, that is legislation's question. my research, my proposal is going to be in 3 parts. I'm going to go out to the parents, six cohorts of parents, and ask them, if there were a law in place, would you like to be able to have that choice at the time to donate? You don't have to, no compunction, no coercion there, but there could be a choice. And then I'm going to look at legal concepts. Children's health is governed by looking at their best interests. And I'm going to challenge what best interests these little souls have, as opposed to the children who are lying in Great Ormond Street, whether or not I'm going to propose that the best interests really should belong to the children in need of these organs, rather than the little child who is bound to die any minute. So I'm going to do an empirical study, and there is a design theory I've produced here, phenomenological and inductive methodological approaches. I'm going to tape record the meetings, and then we'll have to analyse. I don't know what the answer will be. It's a matter of equipoise until the results are known. And then my third part of the research proposal has to do with legislative crafting or drafting. I'm going to try to make write down a potential law which could be applied in this case. And I'm going to use quite a lot of the information gathered from attending IALS seminars. In the end, I hope that my arguments will be made, the questions answered, draft legislation crafted, statute silence will be broken, medical confusion settled, and whereas this is where we started, there's wastage in my mind of organs from these little babies. I want to do my empirical research. Oops. Okay, gone. But then we will have a new law to govern the legality of giving these parents the option to donate their baby. And there are some references. Hopefully it'll be published one day, or parts of it. And again, thank you very much for your kind attention.